Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss the latest polling time again, which shows that the public now think that Labour would act to deal with almost all of the issues that voters consider important better than the Conservatives. And you consider that this is now, when the Conservatives are changing leader and the public will be willing to give the new leader a chance. What on earth is this going to look like once the new government is seen to be failing as badly as the previous administration? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, some interesting poll results from both YouGov and Ipsos Mori out on how Labour and the Conservatives stack up against each other. As far as the public is concerned, the big one is always the economy. By and large, the public generally accept that Labour are more committed to the NHS and tackling inequality, but there's also a general belief that the Conservatives are the party of economic competence. Absolutely drives me mad as it happens, because this is not a perception backed up by the data. You know, when I was growing up, I was a lot of voters now. When I was growing up, I wasn't a voter when I was growing up. When I was growing up, there was this thing. You sort of thought, oh, well, Labour are good for this and this and this, and the Conservatives are better at this, this and this. And and I gravitated towards Labour because, well, the things that they were better at were the things that I thought were more important. But then as you get older and you pay attention, you think, no, the Conservatives are just bad at everything, aren't they? But it's a tough perception to shake, this idea of being the party of law and order or the party of economic competence. But once the public consider Labour to be the more likely to manage the economy, better than the Conservatives anyway, you're basically looking at the end of another Tory government. Because it's their only real advantage in an election. The Conservatives will, of course, push their culture wars. That's what they're doing. They'll bring up immigration, lefty lawyers, wokeism, statue defilers, the whole caboodle. And yeah, they'll fire up a few people that watch GB News with these issues. But voters, by and large, aren't all that bothered about these things. And they're especially not bothered about these things when the country is in the middle of a very real crisis that is negatively impacting their lives. Now, for the Tories to win, they have to claim that they will manage the economy better than the alternative. The economy is always a top issue during a general election. Most people don't even know what the economy is. If you were to ask them, so what's the economy then? It's something to do with jobs and money, isn't it? And people like jobs and money. Well, they don't always like the jobs, but they need the money, and winning the lottery is not a viable life strategy. In the 2019 general election, Boris Johnson made no attempt to say things had been going well. He didn't stand on a platform of success from nearly 10 years of Tory government. They'd been in power for nearly a decade. And he couldn't actually present the public with a record of success, economic or otherwise. But Johnson did present two lines which worked on the public. First, that he was promising good times to come with Brexit, as well as levelling up as it happens. Well, Brexit has given us worse time and the levelling up promises aren't here. If the Tories wait until the last possible moment for the next election, all it's going to do is give voters more time to realise that neither Brexit nor levelling up is delivering on its promises. And bear in mind, there are still a lot of voters when it comes to Brexit who want us to stick with Brexit, but an overwhelming number of them think it's going badly. It's like, oh yeah, we should still stay out the EU, but Brexit's going really badly. They're being told right now that this is because Boris Johnson didn't really go for it. He was too timid, you see, because he wasn't really a Brexiteer. Well, now Liz Truss is having a crack. And they're being told, oh, she's really going to go for it. Wasn't she a Remainer? Yeah, but she's now a Brexiteer. When that fails to provide the promised dividends, it's going to be a lot harder to claim that it's just the way the particular Tory leader is implementing it. And for those who can be made to think that, they're probably likely to think, well, hang on a minute, if Theresa May messed it up and Boris Johnson messed it up and Liz Truss messed it up, maybe it's the Conservative Party that's the problem. But whatever people think, they're much less likely to fall for the promises of better times to come, whether from Brexit or levelling up. A government that's been in power for 15 years is already on shaky ground, and one that has delivered only 15 years of worsening living standards and for the first time in the modern era declining life expectancy, they're in a tricky situation. The second line Johnson used to great effect was, yeah, sure, life is bad under the Tories, absolutely, no denying that, but it would be much worse under Labour. People seem to forget that just 10 years earlier it was actually way better, but the line still worked for whatever reason. Well, the latest polling suggests that this line is also unlikely to work at the next election. According to Ipsos Mori, Labour under Starmer are considered to be a better prospect for almost all key policy areas that were polled. In fact, the Conservatives only won on one, but which one it was depended on who the next Prime Minister would be. The public thought that Liz Truss was more likely than Keir Starmer to reduce taxes. Well, she's always banging on about reducing taxes, so that's no surprise. Rishi Sunak was considered more likely than Keir Starmer to grow the economy. All right, then. I mean, that would be more worrying for Labour, but it's not by a large margin. But Sunak has almost no chance. Unless and until something spectacular happens, I'm going to keep working on the assumption that Liz Truss is going to be the next Prime Minister. And she is only considered more likely to cut taxes. Well, two important things about that. First, by the time the election rolls around, the public will have had time to actually see her try and deliver on her promises. This is not going to occur. Secondly, voters aren't actually that bothered about tax cuts. Like, you might imagine from the way the Tories and their client media go on that we're all about the tax cuts. Oh, they go on about tax cuts all the time. British voters must really love tax cuts. No, polling shows time and again, we don't like our taxes being wasted, but we understand that taxes are needed for good public services. And we know that good public services saves us more money than a few quid off your taxes. Like, take Liz Truss's line on the energy crisis. No handouts for the extra £200 a month you're going to have to suddenly find to pay your energy bill. No, my tax cuts are the way forward. But the thing is, her tax cuts will save an average worker, what is it, something like £70 a month? At best, a maximum of £70 a month. So, of course, it's in the public interest for the government to keep the taxes and wipe out their energy bill increase. Oh, yeah, great, Liz. You're going to give us £200 extra on the energy bill, but you're going to save us 70 quid in taxes. Tell you what, why don't you keep the taxes and wipe out the energy bill increase? Gordon Brown's been talking more about solutions, writing in the papers. Amongst other things, he's talking about proper price controls, basically saying, you're not raising the energy price anymore to energy companies. And any energy company that whines and says, oh, you can't do this, it's like, fine, we'll just, if you can't manage that, we'll just nationalise you. He's saying temporarily, but again, whether it's temporary depends whether or not what the future government wants to do with it. But that's the plan. And I will say as a little aside, because I've seen some people go, oh, Gordon Brown's taking the lead. Where's Keir Starmer here? Gordon Brown's not a rogue voice here. He's working with the current Labour leadership. What he's doing now, this is a common political trick, is Labour are working on their plan. Apparently they're going to publish it next week. What's happening here is Gordon Brown's talking about various solutions. They're testing the water. So they get it out there. Labour will then carry out some polling, see what chimes with voters. And then their official plan next week will be whatever is chiming with voters. And voters are going to be a lot more in tune with the idea of a government just telling energy companies to, do you know what? Don't put your prices up anymore. Keep them as they are. The public are going to quite like that. Because if that idea does chime with the public and Labour, as part of their plan, say, look, the government should just tell the energy companies, stop profiting from the crisis and concentrate on delivering an affordable public service, well, I think that's the sort of government people are going to like. Rather than a government that say, no, we have to protect the profits because of some trickle-down theory that was long since discredited. And then YouGov also had a poll of interest. They were charting the lead that the Conservatives have over Labour when it comes to the perception of who is best on the economy. So since 2015, they've plotted the Conservatives have held their lead every year until now. It's gone. And when you look at midterm polling, so what you always consider is, never mind where it is midterm, to what extent will the Conservatives be able to recover that poll lead for the election? I would say not a snowball's chance in hell. I'll give you two solid reasons as well. The first is down to the reality of their government. Despite Liz Truss saying that she will avert the recession, she will not. Now, I'm not an economic expert. I can't say, if they do this, this and this, it would avert the recession. But I do know that her policy proposals will actually make the recession deeper. So if it's possible to now avert the recession, Liz Truss is not going to be the one to do it. Now, of course, it is almost certain that she's lying about her policies right now because they are truly insane. But I still doubt she intends to manage the economy well. I don't think she's going to prioritise averting the recession. So we are headed for a recession, and a big one. Even though the recession is likely to be overcome the next election, well, it certainly better be, the economy will still be in bad shape. More people are going to be learning the term stagflation. The idea that the Tories will regain a perception of economic competence is highly unlikely. Then there's the second aspect. Now, as I keep saying, it's not enough for the party of government to collapse. The alternative in opposition still has to win voters over. Otherwise, it's often a case of better the devil you know. All Labour have to do is talk about their own clear, bold plans to deal with the problems, and voters will absolutely give it a go because they'll look, the Tories have got no answers here. Labour say they've got answers. Give it a crack. Could it actually be worse? After 15 years, they'll probably decide no. And the Tories do recognise the danger in this as well. This is not just me saying it. The Tories and their client journalists for a long time have constantly been saying, oh, it's all very well criticising the government. I sat there carping from the opposition benches. But Labour do not have a plan to deal with this. Well, they do, and they have. They've put forward plans to deal with lots of issues, from the pandemic to lockdown exams, crisis in the NHS, the war in Ukraine, cost of living crisis. It's fair to say they've not been great in making sure lots of people know about these plans. But over time, they're going to keep pushing these plans. And with every voter that learns about Labour's plans, it'll be one voter fewer who will fall for the line that Labour have no plan. And when it comes to the general election proper, there's no way for the media to avoid giving Labour a platform to explain their plans. No, I see no way that the Tories can recover the public confidence in them economically. And when it comes to other aspects of government, the Conservatives tend not to win over Labour even when times are good. You know, the only other thing they tend to come across better on is defence and law and order. Well, that's a bit tricky at the moment. Even, I can't remember if it was the Mail or the Express, they tend to merge into one, moaning about the fact that policing is failing at the moment. Well, that's not a good sign for the government. Now, this is the best sign yet that Liz Truss is simply going to preside over the collapse of yet another disaster of a Tory government. Because note that both Truss and Sunak openly talk about the problems that the country's in. They're not trying to say, oh, yeah, actually, this is not too bad with just these global problems. No, they're saying the country's in a mess. They talk about the collapse of public services, both of them, as if they were in opposition. So it's clear that at the next election, they won't be able to deny the problems because people have recordings of them. So the only way to win is to convince people that as bad as things are, just like in 2019, as bad as things are, it's better than it would be under Labour. But the current polling evidence suggests they are not going to make this argument successfully on this occasion. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.